As I wrapped up our last session, I mentioned how that we're unpacking our mission statement. And our mission statement goes like this. We partner with churches to send teams to facilitate Bible translation and community development while working to establish indigenous churches. And so over the next 4 sessions, we're going to unpack different parts of this mission statement. And next, we're going to be looking at teams. And we have a brother here. Weston is here with us, obviously in person. So that's a blessing to have him here with us. He was part of the training week here at All Nations. Weston is preparing to go to Colombia to be part of reaching a people group there in Colombia. And maybe I'll let you talk more about that work that you'll be doing in Colombia. And so his title is The Path to Team Formation. What does it look like to team up with other people? And oftentimes they're from different churches, even geographically quite different areas of the United States. And so we'll hear about that and how that is coming together for their team. All yours, Weston.
My journey to team formation. So there's a verse that I think of when I think about what has transpired over the last several years in this journey of mine. And it's, for we walk by faith and not by sight. And it has been a walk of faith and of seeing God work, of obstacles, and seeing a clear path forward. And it's not been an intellectual exercise. It's been more of an act of faith. There's no way that I could have figured everything out the way God was leading. My current status is I am planning to team with the More Hearts among the Colombian peoples with a code name of Asada. And God has worked out toward that end. As I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of contact with foreign missions. I didn't know many foreign missionaries. But as I grew older, I became more interested in that. When I was 18, I made my first trip out of North America down to Guatemala and El Salvador. That was my first experience out of North America. And over the years, I have traveled more and more in Latin America. I taught school in southern Belize 1 year. And later, I taught school in Chihuahua, Mexico 1 year. And I studied Spanish and traveled back and forth visiting friends. I was teaching school 1 year in 2015 at my home church in North Carolina, when I first heard about All Nations. I was reading the CAM newsletter and I saw this little sentence or whatever somewhere in there about All Nations. And so I emailed CAM and they directed me to All Nations. And so I began to learn about the unreached people groups of the world. Through that correspondence, Joel Martin and his family came and gave a presentation at the church in North Carolina. And I was really gripped by the needs in the world. I had met Ben Sullivan in southern Belize, and I knew that there were needs with the Mayanga that he was working with. And I had a cousin that had hiked with Johnny Pinkham back in the day. So I knew that there were those works going on, but I had no idea that there were so many language groups without the scriptures. And so through that continuing involvement with the presentation at our church, I attended ABT Explore in December of 2016 and continued to feel convicted about the needs in the world. The 2019 statistics say that there are over 2,000 languages with no scriptures whatsoever. But I faced a time of uncertainty through the next couple of years, trying to sense what God's will was for my life or a path forward. I was struggling. I didn't have a sending church behind me, and I was struggling to know if it was God's will for me to move forward with the Bible translation, or if He was going to use me in some other way, perhaps as a support role. But God was working behind the scenes. So initially at Explore 2016, I had met Matthew Mohartz for the first time, just basically a name and a face. And then later, I was invited up to State College here, and I would have got to know their family better right before they went to Colombia to begin that assessment of the language needs there in the Amazon region. And I was encouraged to knock on a few more doors, and through the process, the Lord opened the way for Blue Mountain Christian Fellowship to serve as my sending church. And then I began studying on the New Testament translation track. I began Joseph Neal's Greek course in December of 2017, which was a year after I had attended the first Explore, but it seemed like 5 years in between. And I was a member in training with ABT. And the next spring, Matthew Mohartz came back and gave a talk about the language assessments in the Amazon region. And there were a lot, at that time it seemed to me there was a lot of interest in the peoples of the Amazon region. And this talk is about team compatibility. So that was one of the things that I was thinking of. There could have been as many as 3 different teams with the interest that I thought was potential teammates with a New Old Testament translator, New Testament translator, and possibly community development personnel. So there was a lot of possibilities. Along with that, the first question that people ask us when we're in training is, where are you going? What language group? And who are you teaming with? And I would often tell people, the where and the who is more of a last question, and the team issue is more of a serious issue. And to me, I held that with an open hand. I was seeking God's will through that time, trying to just be open to how God was leading. So we got to learn to know each other better through spending 9 weeks at SIL together and worshiping and studying together with a number of the other ABT trainees, which included the Mohartz Matthew as he studied there. I forgot one piece there. Matthews returned and gave that presentation at ABT about the language data, and then they returned to the Old Testament training track and went to SIL to continue their linguistic studies. So as time went on, it became clear that, I need to back up a little bit here. There was a time in my training track that I was concerned that maybe I wasn't cut out to be a translator. And I took some counseling through someone who had worked with one of the other Bible translation organizations. And she encouraged me that the difficulty I was experiencing wasn't all that unusual, and it gave me courage to go forward. And as time went on, it seemed like early on there was a lot of possibilities, a lot of questions. Who should I team up with? Who should I pursue? How does that work out? Now you have different subcultures, different churches, different church backgrounds, different fellowships. And how do we work together? How are we supposed to figure out who we team with? Obviously, you have an Old Testament translator, a New Testament translator, and then potentially a community development person. But as time went on, it became clear that More Hearts and myself are the only ones ready to move forward in the Amazon region. I had spent 2 weeks with some of those in Colombia doing a literacy assessment in 2020, January 2020. And as time went on, we began to sense that we should start seeking God's path forward. And so we began having discussions about potential compatibility issues between Matthew and myself and seeking the Lord's will forward. And then COVID shut down and disrupted all travel plans. And so in October of 2020, I was planning to return to Colombia to work with More Hearts towards possibly going to Me Too, and in the process, seek God's way forward through that. See if we would be compatible through just our interaction. But More Hearts came back to the States, and so we began to talk about having a church compatibility assessment up here instead of doing what our initial plans were. And so I came back up from Colombia in January, and we had a church compatibility assessment with Blue Mountain Christian Fellowship in Oregon, as well as representatives from Cuba Mennonite Church, which was Matthew was from, in Oregon. And we go over questions. The compatibility assessment has things like personal gifting, the roles that will need to be filled, or questions like, are your teammates crucial or a help? How will you be affected if your teammates need to leave the work? And we'll also discuss some doctrinal and personal expectations to identify potential conflicts. And the Lord has opened the path forward for us to move forward. And I'm thankful for the way He has made things clear. So how do we know if we can or should work with someone else? These are important questions. How much time do we have? You know, the main reason that missionaries leave the field is because of internal conflicts with the teams. So how do we know whether we can make it work? But as I thought about that question, you know, that's a really pertinent question. But I don't think that we have the capability of deciding that ahead of time. It is a walk of faith and seeking God's direction. You know, we can lay some groundwork. So we need to make sure that Christ is the head of our decisions, that then there are non-negotiables, and that there are things that are also not non-negotiables, as Christ is the head that actually is reflecting His authority. And also that we recognize the carnality aspects of causing divisions that are carnal, or not accepting to work with people, you know, like the spirit of I'm of Paul, or I'm of Apollos, or I'm of Cephas. Those are tensions in the scriptures in relation to teaming together. And unfortunately, teaming doesn't always hold out long term. But if we are following God through the whole process, whatever the outcome is, we can trust that God will build His kingdom, and we can work under His authority, whatever the outcome is.
Weston, thank you so much for taking us on that journey of team formation. You said the where and the who is really one of the last issues that we think about in this regards. One of the most important things of going and being part of a team, going into an unreached people group, like some people say, going into a pressure cooker, where it's you end up with a lot of stress and and a lot of pressures that you might have never experienced here in our own culture, it's very important to be with the right people, with people you can work with. And that's something that we often talk about here at All Nations, the importance of team compatibility, of teams compatible, being able to work together, maybe not only in church doctrine, but also in other ways as well. So thank you for taking us on that journey from 2016 till now, and very excited to see you soon. Heading to Colombia, and as somebody has said, moving off the map, back to the Asata people group. So God bless you as you do that, along with Matthew Morehart and their family. We have a recording that I want to play here on Teams. I had meant to play it before I brought Weston up, and we're going to go ahead and do that right now. Just a short little video unpacking the thought of teams in this work. Go ahead, Jeff, play that.
Although there are a lot of things that could influence the size of a church planting team, our team model includes 3 parties. This could be, for example, 3 families or 2 families and a single person. Each of these would have one of 3 roles: an Old Testament translator, a New Testament translator, or a community development facilitator. Teammates often come from different churches, so we facilitate discussions with the churches to determine how they can work together on the project. Each member's sending church and support team are involved in the decisions of who they team with. Teaming together in such intense and sometimes isolated situations isn't easy, and each person will want not only God's blessing and help, but also their church's blessing and support as they work through challenges over the years ahead. The team doesn't include a designated church planter. Rather, the whole team is involved with church planting. The specific roles they train for and fill contribute to the church plant as they are involved in working with the people, building relationships, teaching, discipling, and translating. This isn't just a Bible translation team or a community development team. This is a church planting team.